called benzene, which you will see that's traditionally drawn like this.
Those are double bonds.
Those are double bonds. But in actuality, the molecule actually looks like this. So that's what the molecule actually looks like. So when we see something like dopamine up there, or when we see something like MDMA, or we see something like caffeine or any other molecule in our bodies, there's actually carbon sitting where we can't see that. Can everyone see that, by the way? Cool. So if we circle one carbon, right, this one right here, how many bonds do we count going around that carbon? 4. Exactly. It's on the 4th place of the periodic table. That's all we want you to get. Yeah. Just everything is connected.
When we see things like this, we just count 4, and so we assume that there's something else like that top vertices is another hydrogen because they can see 4 bonds.
So, and it's kind of cool to remember that oxygen has 6 electrons going around it. So say we took away one of these hydrogens right here, and we put an oxygen. And there's also a hydrogen right there. Okay, so that's like that oxygen and hydrogen that's on that dopamine molecule, which is a little bit polar. So why, again, is this molecule polar or a little more acidic now that we have that oxygen on there? Well, there's this lone pair of electrons right here. So we can see that there's an electron that's involved with this bond right here. There's an electron that's involved with this bond right here. There's an electron here. There's an electron here. Here, here, and I count 6. Oxygen is on the 6th place on the periodic table. It's okay if you don't get that, but I think a lot of you kind of get the point. The point of it is not to be able to like look at this and to be able to realize how many electrons are there. The point is that everything is connected when we look at the periodic table, when we look at things that are like acidic or not acidic, and we'll see why when we're going to get into biology. ASAP.
Okay. I just want to ask a classic question. Like, why do you think that? I'll go back to that one. Okay. Why do you think the it's like near the nitrogen? It's like an angle. Like it's a little jigsaw. Like, why do you think it's just straight? Why do you think it has that little angle right there?
Like this?
Yeah.
Positive and negative charges. Sort of. It's in order to differentiate how many carbons there are in that string of atoms.
I think you're talking about conformation a little bit, right?
Well, it's because it's 3-dimensional. So these are just 2-dimensional representations of 3-dimensional things. So just remember that.
So you're talking about the bond angles?
Yeah. So it's a 3-dimensional bond angles.
Yeah, we can make them with our little here. In a little bit, I can make this ring and show you guys what it looks like on the model.
Yeah, we can build up using all that.
One question. What's the difference between like an HO compound and an OH compound?
Same thing.
Same thing?
Different people write it different ways, depending on where.
Because you're supposed to write like the oxygen, because the oxygen's what bonds to the carbon. So you're supposed to write like O bond C. So if it's like a C, you go O H.
Okay.
It's just because you want the H to be on the outside, because it's not the one bonding to the carbon.
Where do we have chirality? Where's that chirality?
It's later.
It's later. Okay.
Do you have a question? Yeah.
So when you wrote out the simplified version of benzene, is it just carbon that they'll like leave out to simplify it, or is there
It's just carbon.
Just carbon.
And carbon and hydrogen.
Well, yeah, and they don't show the hydrogen bonds because
I don't know the difference between which one would be there?
Because I could just tell you right here that there's a carbon sitting right here, and there has to be a hydrogen there. How do I know that? Because I can count 3 bonds. 1, 2, 3. I know that carbon is sitting on the 4th place of the periodic table, so there must be a hydrogen there.
carbon will bond to hydrogen whenever it needs. So that's why we don't draw the hydrogens, because if we did, it would be really messy, and these big compounds, there'd just be hydrogens all over the place, and we would be able to really see what was happening, or what structure it was. So it's just helpful.
Cool. And if we don't get through this whole lecture, we can kind of spill into the next one with Henry, who's going to be going over molecular biology.
So biomolecules are the ones with carbon and Schnapp's And they're really important, and not just because of their structure, they do a lot of other things too. And there are 4 main classes: proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids.
Everything in our body falls in these 4 classes. Everything in that plant falls in these 4 classes. Everything in the millions of bacteria that are on the floor fall in these 4 classes. This is what the classes of biomolecules are.
First one is proteins, and they're really important as well, and they have extremely versatile form and function. And does anyone know what proteins is?
Well, that's a hemoglobin.
Yeah, it's hemoglobin. So this transports oxygen in our blood, and it's actually 4 different polypeptides together, and they form a structure. Maybe it's 2. It's 2 different ones, but 4 of them.
That's a pretty scary word, polypeptide, Jess. Who knows what a polypeptide means? Oh man, it's like you better explain what that means.
Polypeptide is, yeah. So each little, it's basically different amino acids bonded together through peptide bonds, which is the type of bond they form with each other. So amino acids are the basic building blocks of proteins, and there are a couple different kinds, and there are 20. So every single protein in our entire body is made up of a combination of the 20 amino acids, and these are them.
Couldn't have said it better myself. You know, a lot of times we think that the kind of backbone, that the kind of skeleton of our body is physically our bones. You know what I mean? Is this like the foundation of our body? But actually, if you were to dissolve all the other molecules except protein, you would see this web like throughout your body. Essentially all this protein, and you could see my nose and everything, and it would just look like it was a spider web. And literally, it provides the structure. The protein provides the structure for the fat and the different types of tissues to layer on in my face, and to layer on in that plant, and to like do all that kind of stuff. So protein is like literally the skeleton of our entire body.
So proteins are made up of amino acids, like I said, and they have the primary structure, which is just the basic order of them. And then they basically form secondary structure, which is based on whether or not they're polar or charged, using hydrogen bonds. And then they have different higher order layers of structure. And a protein structure is really important because it basically enables its function, or determines its function, I guess is a popular word. Tertiary structure is just the protein folded in on itself, more complicated, and quaternary structure is when other different proteins have come together to form a protein complex.
So wait, do we tell them to memorize all this? All 20. This is not biochemistry. You know, a lot of the way that, you know, biology is taught, if you take a traditional biochemistry class, they're like, well, memorize every single one of these structures. Is that really that useful in the sense of understanding biology? Maybe that time that we took like memorizing all 20 of these amino acids, maybe we could have taken that time to actually understand what's going on.
What's important is that some are charged, some are uncharged, and it causes them to interact in different ways and form protein structures through weak bonds. And I just really like this picture because it shows the sequence, it folding. There are 2 kinds of secondary structure, which are shown in green, that one, and then it folds, and then they come together. I just like that picture.
So we're going over the central dogma.
That's later.
Oh, that's later.
You want to find them?
So what are proteins made out of? Amino acids. What are amino acids made out of? Come on, guys. Carbon.
Knob.
Knots. What's carbon made out of?
Electrons.
There you go.
And protons.
That's all I want you guys to know. Just want to saw you. Oh wait. Sorry. You want to say something about this?
You were. You were done.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, you know, what do proteins do? They do everything in our bodies. They catalyze reactions. So, what happens when you have a headache and you take an Advil? Well, there's this enzyme that helps to synthesize these things called prostaglandins, which are these inflammatory molecules. Okay? So Advil and aspirin and different types of drugs that we take inhibit that enzyme from producing those molecules that cause inflammation. What happens when you guys go out Saturday night and drink a bunch of alcohol? There's an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase, or ADH. that breaks down, that helps to catalyze the reaction of breaking down that structure I showed you of ethanol. Helps us to essentially not die from the toxicity of alcohol. What happens, related to more like kind of, for those of you who are more interested in psychoactive compounds like MDMA or drugs like that, or LSD or drugs like that, those drugs and neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin are broken down in our brain by an enzyme called MAO, myoamine oxidase. I'll go more into this in the psychopharmacology lecture, but there are actually drugs like certain antidepressants which inhibit that enzyme. So if we're inhibiting that enzyme, neurotransmitters like serotonin, dopamine, they're gonna be in higher concentrations in our synapses between our neurons because we've inhibited that enzyme with the drug. And what are enzymes made out of? Proteins. What are proteins made out of? Amino acids. Amino acids made out of carbon. Okay. Gone off my tangent. Again, this class is gonna get battered.
Lipids do a lot of things. They're energy storage, they make up cell membranes, they're also signal molecules. They're really important. They enable flexibility. Phospholipids are special lipids, and they make up our cell membranes. And the reason they do this is because they have polar heads that like water, and unpolar heads, tails that don't like water. And so when they go together, they form membranes because the tails like to be with each other, and the heads like to be next to water. So it's really cool.
So I made this last night. Everyone see this? We have two liquids in here. This is iced tea, which is hydro. It's polar. It's